And Ikaladera, what was his name? When he got to Ife, Uhe, he now called himself, said, Izodua or Idodua, that was corrupted to Ododua by the Yorubas.
I therefore stand before you today as the 40th Oba of Benin. A direct descendant of Oromiya, the son of Oduduwa, whom the Benin people of that era knew as a Kaladera, their self-exiled prince, who later became ruler in Ile-Ife. The Benin people recognize Oduduwa and his origin, but it is not our place to force this recognition on others outside our boundaries. The history of the world is a shared one, and there will certainly be unexpected connections in future. This is thus a time for unity and not divisiveness, a time for mutual respect, recognizing that our wholeness as people is so much more than the sum of our parts.
Benin has spanned two dynasties. We had the first dynasties that were headed by the Ogienokisore, the Ogisos. There were 31 Ogisos before the Obas became known as Obas. And the last Ogiso was Owodo. Owodo was the father of Ikaladera. You got the point? Yes. Ikaladera was actually the heir apparent to the throne. If Ikaladera was not meant for execution, if it did not meet with positive destiny later on in life, he definitely would have been the 32nd Ogiso. He would have taken over from his father, Owodo. And Ikaladera, what was his name? When he got to Ife, Uhe, he now called himself, said, Izodua or Idodua, that was corrupted to Ododua by the Yorubas. Because what happened? Owodo, why he served as Ogiso, the 31st Ogiso, he had some problems in the harem. He was married to Auko. Auko was the mother of Ikaladera, and Esago was the rival. She was barren. She had no child for Owodo, and she became envious and jealous. She hated Ikaladera. Why should it be this way? And she was the one who eventually went to Owodo, the husband, to say, look, something is wrong in this palace. There is somebody that has come to become Utebude, referring to Ikaladera. After him, we didn't have any other male child in this harem. Something is wrong somewhere. And the womb of all the women are blocked. Something is wrong. She cried out. Then the Ogiso asked, what do we do? Please, why don't we have a mystery that will go to the oraclist so that we can find out the cause of the problem?
I have one question here. Ogiso, are these sky kings or kings from the
sky? We're talking about the kings from the sky.
Oh, they came from the sky.
Ogienokisore. That is what Ogiso means. Ogienokisore.
Are they in form of spirit or a human?
There has never been a time the Obas or Ogisos had been seen as mortals. And so, they went straight. Some chiefs followed the sago to the diviner. And when they got there, the diviner looked at the sago and spotted her as the problem. In fact, the only solution, the recommendation that the Baba gave, was the elimination of Isago. That Isago must be eliminated, must be sacrificed before there could be positive happiness within the harem of Ogiso Owodo. And they left. On the way, you know what happened? Isago played a very fast one. And on no ground would another man sleep with Oba's wife. The man would die. And so what happened? She pretended as if something had happened to her. She pretended as if she could not walk. And so she moved towards inside the bush. And then the chief did not want anything to happen to Ogiso's wife. They accompanied her. And of a sudden, she pretended to have fallen. And the chief kind of fell alongside. And she was kind of naked before them. That was a trap. And when they got you have seen my nakedness. Now, you know what is going to happen? You are going to go down to Ogiso and tell him that I am not the one to be used as sacrifice. It is the only son Udegbode that should be used as sacrifice. And they say, no, Awa. They say, okay, when I get there, I'm going to tell the Oba that you attempted to rape me. She was already wailing until they didn't have any option than to bow down to her request. And they got to the palace and they went there and narrated the story. Yes, they said Kaladina was to Udegbode. And by Ionia, they said he must be killed. And Ogiso Wodo agreed. Okaladina, you must go. And so they went. Emissaries, they were sent, the executioners, CMO. They took their matches and they went straight. What was it Kaladiran did not do to appease his father? Owodo would not listen. He sang sonorously. He climbed the treetops, made acrobatic displays, trying to impress, but nobody listened to him. And so, but it got to a point as they were heading towards Uhe. When they got there, the executioners pitied him. They said, okay, we will leave you, but there must be a treaty between us. You must agree with us. We must come into a covenant. You must covenant with us that on no ground will you ever return to the land of Igodomigodo. He agreed. They were in that bond. They signed it. And so they got a rat, killed it, used the blood stain on the matches, and they went back home. And the Kaladiran was left to wander in the jungle. And so when they got back home, they showed their matches. Awene. Ogiso Atokwe. Everybody said it's said, and they showed them. And so, good, right.
Deal is done.
And so, that was how he wandered. He was still dressed like a prince. And so, at the time he got to Uhe, now called Ife, the people had problems in terms of administration. There was confusion. Eventually, when they saw this great prince, he was tall, handsome. In fact, they saw him as a great warrior. They looked at him and said, look, this one will head us. And then he shook his head and said,
Ilefe.
It became Ife.
Ileife.
Izodua became Ududua. And they said, what did he say? His name is Ududua.
Wow.
And that was how he mounted the throne that way in Ife. Ilefe.
So he left Benin Kingdom.
He left. Not Benin. Igodomigodo.
That's why Benin was called.
I would tell you, there was no title like Benin.
Okay, it was called Igodomigodo at that
In the
time.
land of Igodomigodo. And so, way back home, there was something, a tragical event happened. And what was that? Ogiso Wodo was banished from the land of Igodomigodo. On account of an offense that the historians describe as the sin of Kirikuva, the execution of a pregnant woman. When it happened, the people of Igodomigodo spoke with just one voice and said, no, Magigualo, Oakba. And so he was banished. The throne was left in vacuum. Because administration can never be left in vacuum, that actually necessitated the appointment of Evian, the father of Ogiame. He became the acting administrator in the land of Igodomigodo. His administration was marred with, in fact, there was maladministration in his time. It was marred by a series of irregularities, administrative decadence, administrative infections, administrative irregularities that marred his governance. And what followed? The people began to hear the fame of Zodua. The Yorubas called Odudua. And then now the news got to them that the man did not eventually die. He's actually the one reigning. Reigning, pulling, in fact, he's the one that is reigning and putting everything together, administrative-wise, in effect. They now sent the Uzamanihion, led by Chief Oleha. They went straight and they saw him. Uzamanihion is usually headed by Oleha. There are 7 of them. Chief Oleha. Eheneden himself is part of it. And we have a Dohen. We have a Holo. It's almost part of Uzamanihion. Chief Eho is part of Uzamanihion. A Hondon, part of Uzamanihion. I've mentioned all of them now. So these are Uzamanihion. Oleha led their mystery down to Ife. When they got there, they requested, they begged Oduduwa to come and rule. And he said he would not trust them. And what did he do? He gave them 7 lice in a calabash. Go and preserve the 7 lice in 3 years. If you can preserve them, I will trust your fidelity. When Oleha came back, he placed the 7 lice in the hair, on the head of one of the slaves, and warned him categorically never to tamper with him, otherwise he could be beheaded. For 3 years, they sucked blood. For 3 years, he would then not scratch his hair. At the end of that 3 years, when Oleha called a servant, he looked there to present the calabash. 7 lice. For 3 years. 3 years.
Lice.
Lice.
On top of his head for 3 years.
Oh yes, for 3 years. So they took it down in a calabash. And when Izodua saw it, he was stunned. He was stunned, highly puzzled. He could not fathom how Chibole had did it. He now knew that the land of Igodo was actually ready for him. But then the journey was far. Egbore, and the man was already getting old. He could no longer summon his youthful strength to action. Consequent upon that, he sent his son, Omononya, that they corrupted to Oromio. Omononya, no. Oromio came. He came back. Now, before the emergence of Oromio, that was when this man, this Osogan actually, yes, because Osogan brought us to the story. Osogan, the mysterious monster, was actually found at Ikboba Hill, killing people, especially women, on market days. At this moment, the people of Igodo slept with their 2 eyes opened for fear of being lynched by this dreaded monster. You know what? It eventually took the heroic effort of Ogiamie, the son of Evian. From the distance, he threw his spear. The pierced through it, and the spear came out on the other side
Of
Osogan. And Osogan, like a dinosaur, wandered about the jungle and eventually collapsed, slumped, and died. At that time, the entire kingdom of Igodo went aflame with tribulations. Everybody was excited.
Yeah.
Ogiamie became a hero who began to look to think himself as a successor to the father Evian. He began to, he started taking, illegally, he started taking the strides of an Ogiso. He wanted to be there to succeed his father. But the people told him in one voice, Obi Opai or Yoba, Obi Ogiso or Yogiso. You cannot. And so that prompted the request from Ife. But eventually, what's his name? He was actually a warrior. Ogiamie was actually a warrior. And what happened? Eventually, when the son of Mononya came, he was confronted at Ekipara. By who?
Okay.
By Ogamiye. And so there was battle. They fought. They fought from dawn to dusk. But Omononya prevailed against him. And that was how he eventually began to rule. He became the first Oba of Benin.
That's why any Oba that wants to become an Oba today, they must bring the particular descendant of Ogamiye, they must come and do a mock wrestling.
Mock battle, yes. It became a landmark in Benin. And see, when he began to rule in Benin, he had problems. But you see, in history, which I would like to debunk, they said Ogamiye Mononya eventually fled Benin, and he called the land of accession. It was not the Beninese that were hostile. It was not the people of Egodomigudo that were actually hostile to him. They loved him as the Oba. They embraced him as their own Oba. But the family of Ogamiye would not let him be.
Okay.
Are you getting the point? The family of Ogamiye, they were problematic to him. And so he could not, he began to reason this way. I know where I'm coming from. It's like somebody in royalty, somebody that has been living in affluence. I mean, I have come here to help. This is my fatherland, so I have come to help. But now you don't want me to do it. That was how he left. That was how he left, and he called the place Ile Ibinu because of Ogamiye.
Land of accession.
The land of accession.
People with the first verse.
Ile Ibinu.
Ibinu. That is Benin today.
Yeah, that is.
And that was how he ran. But this time he didn't go back to Ife. He now went to
Oyo.
Found Oyo. He became the Alafin of Oyo.
He's the grandfather of Shango.
So you can see. You can see the various maps. You can see the orderly presentation of all these. Now, before he left, he ran through Ego, where he impregnated the daughter of Ogego. And that one delivered, when it is in the history that when the boy was born, he was dumb. But there was this marble they used to play those days, it was like our sports. As they were playing it, he was the champion. And there was just one, there were two champions on ground now. You know, as they played from dawn to dusk until there was just one seat left. And he was the one who knocked that seat, and everybody shouted. And in excitement, he said, "Oh, Wamika!"
That's Eweka.
And that became Eweka.
They keep corrupting the names.
It's like that.
The white could not pronounce the names.
And that became Eweka.
Like where you are calling for Ekenwana, it's actually Ekionwa market of sheeps. If you go down there, you see where they say sheeps.
Okay.
Down.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
After that, we now had Oba Eweka the first, who actually became the second Oba. Although we used to think he was the first Oba. In history it is written he was the first Oba. But when our present Oba was sworn in, when he was enthroned, he corrected it. What do you think? What was Omononya? If his son was Omononya was the first Oba. He started the second dynasty. His son became the second. Oromiyo called the land Ile Ibinu, the land of accession. The Benis, the people of Benin, of Igodomigodo, now said, what did he say? They said Ubini. So the land became known as Ubini. Then in the time of Oba Essigir, about 1550 AD, when the Portuguese visited, they asked, what is this land? They told them Ubini, and they just said Benin. And the Portuguese now changed it to Benin. The land became known as Benin.